Good afternoon to everyone. We seem to have a pretty brave attendance today. I got about 57 people on. Welcome to the MU-NCORP PI's meeting at the spring group meeting. We have a relatively unstructured meeting today. We're going to start out by the way we typically do, hearing from NCI, MU-NCORP to begin with. So we're going to have Kate Castro kind of give us some updates on CCDR. And today, I believe we will have Dr. Mccaskill Stevens herself tell us, give us some words about the MU-NCORP overall. Also, Bernard Parker, who typically joins us, I understand has been deployed to the border. So welcome everyone. And I will then, I think, hand things over to Kate for the CCDR overview. Kate, do you have your slides ready yet?
I just have the one slide, Matt, whenever you're ready to put it up. Thank you, Ray and Don, and thank you, everyone. It's great to be with you. Even though we're virtual, it's terrific to have everyone together for the spring meeting of SWOG. Wanted to share across the entire MU-NCORP an important message that we want to make sure has gotten out to everyone. I know Dr. Mccaskill Stevens shared this by email with the administrators and the PIs just a couple of weeks ago. But we wanted to confirm for everyone that we will be having our 2021 MU-NCORP annual meeting. It will be in the virtual format. It will be held August 26th and 27th this year, and you can see the times there. It will be from 12 to 5 o'clock each day, Eastern Time. We will be having an Administrators Day, which Marge Good is our team member who facilitates that and really works with everyone to get that organized. And that's held every other year, most often. And we did not have it last year, and we had an interest in having it again this year. So that will be held on Wednesday, August 25th. And again, that will be from 12 to 5. So we're expecting the website and the registration information to be available in mid-June. So please watch for additional information that will be forthcoming from all of us about the annual meeting. And please save the date on your calendars. And we're sorry we can't meet in person on the NIH campus. However, we do appreciate that this allows the opportunity for a lot of your research staff who work on the studies to be able to attend some or all of the meeting and hear the presentations and really be engaged in the work. So there are positive sides to the virtual part as well. On the CCDR front, I think we are feeling like things are going pretty well. We've got sites that are, had slowed down for the fall surge of the COVID pandemic and now picked things back up again and are moving things forward pretty well. We did hear from many sites that the cancer care delivery studies were studies that they found they could do while working remotely, or that they could do in a remote format when the patients were not interested in coming in for a lot of visits as well. So we are pleased that we have seen our enrollment and accrual go up, as certainly for some of the studies we've got coming out now that have clinicians involved in it. Those enrollments have gone up significantly in the last couple of months. So that's all good news, and we look forward to hearing from all of you as the progress reports come in, because it will soon be progress report time. There'll be more information given about that. There was some at the last administrator webinar in April, and there'll be more information forthcoming. So if there's any questions along the way, you know that your program directors in CCDR, Brenda, Jay, and myself, are always available. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thanks, Ray. I think those are my updates.
Thanks, Kate. I'm gonna, so Don, I don't know if you want to share some words before we get too deep into this.
I guess just a few. First of all, welcome everybody. I apologize, the way this is set up, I can't use my earphones, so I hope you can all hear me. First of all, I know it's been a super challenging year. And for everybody, I think, we want to come together virtually to support each other, to support the work that you're all doing, and to support our mission of improving lives for our cancer patients. In that, we really know the sites have a unique expertise in recruiting to clinical trials and also recruiting diverse populations to clinical trials. So one of the things I wanted to mention is a new initiative that through SWOG, which we're doing, which is a symposium that's really geared towards the sites. And we're going to hopefully ask as many sites who are willing to participate to sign up for the symposium, and you'll be getting a link, an email to present your stories, what has worked, what hasn't worked for clinical trial accrual, especially for recruiting diverse populations to clinical trials. So that we can all learn from the people with the most experience, which are the coordinators, research nurses, and PIs at our community oncology practices. And we're organizing a symposium that is going to be on May 21st in the afternoon to really focus on learning from each other's experiences. And following that symposium, there's going to be a mechanism where sites and investigators can apply for grants to get extra funding to learn what works and what doesn't in terms of accrual to clinical trials. So I want you to all be on the lookout for that because that's another way we can all come together and learn from each other's experiences.
Thanks, Don. So today, although we would like to also hear from as many people as we can, I think the format we took last time seemed to be very popular. It gave people a chance to get stuff off their chest and gave us a good idea of people's priorities, some of which we will address today. But we have Dr. Mccaskill Stevens in the audience. Basically, Athena has descended from Olympus, so I think we need to acknowledge her and maybe hear from her if she has any high-level points she wants to make with us. I think she was, aha. So Dr. Mccaskill, Stevens, could you, I think you can unmute yourself. I can see you're in the audience now. Great. Hi, Rota.
Hi. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. So I just have a few brief comments to share with you. First of all, we at NCI are still teleworking, so we're not back in the offices. I just wanted to say that, we've gained so much information from you from our sessions with the PIs, and it's been so valuable to us as we think about where to go from here. I did want to share with you that all of the relaxation items that were provided to you in terms of telemedicine, the audits, et cetera, everything has been extended to the end of the year. Even the oral agents, IND agents that was scheduled to stop, I think in May, has been extended to be operative through the rest of the year. I also wanted to announce that the quarterly meeting for the community sites is on May 4th, and the research base are on May 5th. Please be present. Lots of things are going on. We very frequently get new initiatives that come along and are released with very, very fast turnaround submission sites. So please, as best you can, please try to participate on those days, May 4th and May 5th. I think the notices have gone out. If they haven't, we will send them out. But also like to take this opportunity to ask you if there are topics that are of particular interest to you, please send them to us so that we can put them on the agenda. I'm around if there are any specific questions that you'd like me to try to address. I'm happy to do so.
So I think the word you used was relaxation items. It sounded a bit more promising, and then you told us what they were, and I was like, oh, okay, she's really talking about clinical trials.
Well, I don't want to cut that short because we are going to be gathering information about your experiences during the pandemic. And there may be things that we didn't relax that you may have found that were innovative that various sites may have implemented to make their own institutions work. And we're happy to hear about those as well. So it's not, we're looking for new innovative thoughts that could be considered. I think the time is right. So, if you've done something that we didn't relax, please let us know.
Excellent. Well, that's a perfect segue because last time, one of the major issues that came up was about best practices for things like remote consenting and things like that fit under the relaxation items. And Don, I think you had reached out, and I believe Elaine Armstrong was going to make a presentation. Was she, Elaine?
Yes, I'm here. As far as remote consent, I mean, we're just, are y'all, can you hear me?
Yes, okay.
Okay, because we're just following the guidance that the CIRB has provided. And because, NCORs are using the CIRB for probably 98% of their studies at this point, just a handful of older cancer control studies that are not under the CIRB. And their guidance is actually in conjunction with what the NCI is asking for. But the big thing was that, you definitely can do this process remotely. You need to get a copy of the consent form to the patient, to the participant ahead of time so that they have it in front of them during the process. And the main thing is you have to have a witness. It can be anybody, it can be a family member. It just needs to be somebody that would be able to speak up at some point down the line if there was some questions or concerns about how the consent process occurred. So you need to have a witness, and then after the process takes place, of course, now you need to be in a position where you're either doing a video conference. It can be done by phone, but it would need to be able to have a speaker, they would need a speakerphone or something like that so that both patient and the witness can hear the conversation. And then once the patient signs it and sends a consent form in, then you would add any signatures that are required that will vary from institution to institution. Some institutions have a place. If there was a witness signature, obviously the witness should sign before you mail it in. And then the person obtaining consent, the investigator, every institution has different institutional practices of what signatures they want. But I really, really like to emphasize that you need to document the consent process because that's a good practice at any time, but especially now because when things are done outside of the norm, having a good, summary of the process. So then we understand, well, why is it the signatures are on different dates, or why does this look like it was faxed? I mean, those kinds of things. So it's really important that you just document the process so we know what did happen, on which dates, who was involved, that sort of thing. And, I just recommend you refer to the information that the CIRB has provided on their website.
Great, Elaine. And then there's the issue of remote monitoring. I think they were sort of,
Right.
there.
So as far as remote monitoring, it was March of 15th of last year is when we transitioned into doing, not all, but the majority of our audits and monitoring visits remotely. I'd say about 85% of our registration study audits have been conducted remotely since last March. And of course, those are usually small 1, 2, or 3 cases. So that worked, that worked really, really well. Then as far as the larger treatment audits, it's kind of a mixed bag. We have, the deal is that the patient case is the most difficult, time-consuming part of the audit. And a lot of sites have been able to give us remote access to their EMR. And if they can do that, that helps tremendously. If not, then all those documents have to be uploaded, have to be scanned and uploaded into the source document portal on the CTSU website. Now, we've learned that doing an audit remotely, we're only able to do about 75% of the number of cases we were doing when we were on site. So at this point, we have done audits of maybe up to 30, 35 cases. We've done those remotely when it involved uploading documents to the source document portal. If we do not have access to the EMR, I think it would be very, very difficult to conduct an audit remotely on a really large treatment audit where we're talking 60, 70, 80 cases. We did do a remote audit for Kaiser Southern California sites, and I'm not sure now, I think it was around 70 cases, but they did give us EMR access, and it did take us longer than we had anticipated, so we ended up having to add an extra day on at the end, but we've kind of learned to adjust. So going forward, we are on May 1st, 100%, the audit team will be 100% vaccinated. We are doing some travel. So basically, we're going to have a conversation with any sites that have an audit due like between now and the end of the year. If you want your audit done remotely, absolutely, we can accommodate you. But if your audit is going to involve a really large number of cases and you cannot give us EMR access, we'll have to have a discussion. I just, I heard of one audit that was done by NRG that was a 10-day audit, and I just don't think a site can give up 10 days. That's too much time, and it's a real burden on the audit team. So if we had a site that was gonna take that much time, we might look at possibly postponing the audit, a short period of time or something till we could make it work. The other possibility would be to split it up and say we're going to do, a third of the sites this week, and then maybe a third of the sites next week, and then a third in a couple of weeks. There's different ways we could approach it, but I want it to be as small of a burden to the sites as it is to the audit team, since of course we have a lot of other things going on at the same time. And then the CTSU, has done a lot. They had a portal for uploading documents that was already in place for central monitoring, but it was not intended for audits. And so the CTSU has been really great in working quickly to accommodate and creating the source document portal for documents to be uploaded. And they have been taking feedback from both the audit team and from sites and quickly, making changes and accommodating us, and there's still things in the works. So, they've been great, and it's getting better. The whole process, every time we do it, it's a little easier than it was the last time. But there still are some challenges, but I think we can make it work out. And I think the best thing going forward is just to have a conversation with the when we contact you, set a date, then we can figure out what we're working with, go from there.
Thanks, Elaine. If you don't mind just hanging on, we would like to see if people have questions that you might be able to help with.
I don't know if can we just, I think Warda has something.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the Kaiser duration was because of the volume that they see. But my question was, if you cut back to 75%, was that cut across all research areas, or did you prioritize what studies were being monitoring?
We didn't actually cut back on the number of cases we reviewed. It's just we were only able to review 75% in the same amount of time. So that's what happened is we had to schedule extra time. So we did not cut back on the actual cases that were reviewed. We just had to schedule like extra time to get through them all.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mhm.
So what I was going to ask you, the extension of the relaxation items, do we know for how long is this? This is probably a temporary extension, but do we know the duration and how likely are they to be made permanent if they make sense?
Right now, as I mentioned, it's going to the end of the year. Obviously, from every direction in which we hear from everybody wants it to be extended. It's not just in the hands of the NCI. The FDA is a major stakeholder in that. So I think my response to you is all of the stakeholders are engaged in a discussion to try to figure out if all needs to be or could be extended, or exactly what are the best practices or what were the components of it that are going to facilitate the conduct of clinical trials in the future.
Will there be a public comment opportunity for people out in the field to weigh in on the process at some point?
There will certainly be an opportunity for the network to weigh in. Beyond that, I can't say, but certainly for the network.
Don, over to you.
I'm sure people may have questions about any administrative issues related to either consenting or auditing going forward. Any sites that have any questions or that they want to ask, please, raise your hands and we'll unmute you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I have a question, but it's not about the subject. Is that okay, or do you want me to wait? My question is basically the same thing I've raised before, which I'd like to raise again. Is the issue of the delegation log burden. I still feel that we need extra funding, extra support. It's because of the, I know there's all kinds of discussions as a working group, but at least we're finding it, increasingly burdensome. We really need almost to have a full-time person devoted to that, and we don't have the funding. And given what this is doing to help with registration of drugs, et cetera, and the efficiencies of the cooperative group, isn't there some way to get some extra support, maybe from our pharma partners, thinking outside of the box? Anyway.
I know, this is Elaine. There was a presentation at the Site Operations Committee meeting earlier in the week, and there's things in process to streamline the DTL process. I mean, it's not getting you support, but they are aware that there is a burden, and they're taking steps to and I can't explain it because I'm not used to doing details on your end. I'm only used to creating them and reviewing them. But I do know they're aware of this, that this is a concern, and there is work on streamlining the process. And I don't know if anybody from your site was at that meeting, but they were going to be posting the slides on the website after the meeting.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I believe that CIRB had some kind of feedback process that they did. And I know my regulatory specialist in my program was drafted to provide some comments back then. I haven't heard, this was shortly after our fall group meeting, so probably 6 months ago. I don't know if there has been any subsequent action following that. This is with regard to Jeff's issue about the delegation logs.
This is where I think as was mentioned, there are working groups, and I know that I'm assuming that they're going to be making some official report back to the network at a very soon, but I don't have anything else to update other than that the working group has been convening, and I don't think they've issued a summary of that work at this time. I don't know if Marge is in the audience, but I'm not aware of any update today.
Thanks, Rhoda. More questions. In this never-ending pandemic, surely people have things they want to get off their chest. Now's the time to speak.
I want to get a sense from the sites if you're willing to share. We have had an increasing number of studies that are asking, that are at, site level randomizations, especially for CCD studies. If any of the sites have any questions or concerns about those studies, how they're selected, if it's, you're feeling overwhelmed by them, if they feel like they're the right amount, if anybody's participating in some of these complex studies, if they want to share what their experiences have been.
The audience is being either being very shy or technology is posing a barrier to interaction. I don't see anybody raising their hands except Jeff's previous indication.
Okay.
We usually have a very vocal group.
This is Marge. I see that I've been unmuted now. I put in a chat message. Peg Wisher put in a comment about the working group, which is correct. It's been looked at, it's been talked about, it's been reported. They're working with CTSU to try to develop mechanisms to make the DTL process a little less cumbersome. And it's still in the works. So if there's still pieces of that are not conducive or are still work intense, then send the message specifically. As well, another point that we've talked to CTEP about some of the extra burden that goes with this, and requested some sites have asked for extra funding to go with that, and usually the comment back is many of the studies do have extra funding connected to them that are provided by the industry partners, because most of these are registration trials, and they're trials being done in conjunction with a industry partner, and they have asked, and oftentimes there is extra funding is included in this trial for that extra burden of work. If there are trials that do not have that, and then I think the comment needs to be fed back to the lead protocol organization or research group and the NCTN group that the burden is too much, and that message then can be gotten back to CTEP to see what kind of possibility there might be for extra funding to support that extra work. But most of those trials are CTEP funded. I don't know if there's anybody from CTEP on the call today.
So we got a chat back from the Upstate NCORP about my question. Maybe there's just a delay on my computer. I'm not 100% sure, but asking about my question, asking about site accrual and for site randomization, who's saying that it's working really well. And I don't know if you're willing to sort of share your experiences and unmute your phone so that everybody can hear about that. I know some sites have been hesitant to sign up for studies where it's a site level randomization, and hearing back about some positive experiences might be really helpful.
Melissa Faust, can you unmute yourself? Would you care to tell us a bit more about your chat message?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we have been site randomized for a number of CCDR protocols. For example, S1415CD, we were site randomized to what they called cohort group. For the ENABLE trial, we've been randomized to the Virtual Learning Collaborative. For NRG-CC007CD, we're on ARM A. I could go on and on because CCDR protocols use the site randomization quite frequently. And for me, it's so much easier for my coordinators to really understand what they're supposed to do versus, flipping back and forth between different things. And I think when I was a coordinator and I enrolled 60 people on S1415CD, and I was a new coordinator at that time, it was such a pleasure for me to know that things were going to be the same no matter what. And maybe that's a crutch, but it really was so much easier, and you get in a rhythm and you really feel confident in what you're doing. So, and we've been site randomized to the harder arm, so to speak. For example, on the EROS trial, we were in the intervention arm versus the control arm, and it still makes it easier because you really feel like you know what you're supposed to do and you gain confidence. So, that's not from a PI's view, but it's from a coordinator, CCDR lead's view.
Thank you. Do you feel like we're getting, when we send out emails asking for sites to participate, do you feel like those emails are going to the right people, or are they going to the PIs? Is there something we could be doing better to try to make sure we're getting the interested sites on these studies?
I'll tell you that it's interesting. Each research base sort of communicates in different ways. I don't really, and it's probably something that I've neglected to do, but I don't get a lot of communication from SWOG versus, and maybe it's because I'm on committees, more committees from other research bases, but also URCC and Wake Forest, who only do cancer control and CCDR trials, which is my niche. I'm very involved and get lots of communications from them. So I don't know, I can't comment on what I'm not getting, but, we do plenty of SWOG trials at our MU-NCORP. And again, I personally really like the site randomization. And I think it's, the hard part is you have to have somebody committed to enrolling the number of people that you need, as a research base or as the PI, because if you don't, you're not going to have that comparison that you need. But I also think it's nice to know, this is your goal. These are the number of people that you need to enroll. And, then as a team, you can figure out how you're going to do it. And like I said, you really get to know that protocol because you're doing the same thing every time.
Thank you. That's super helpful, because about half of the CCD studies do have site randomization, and it's always comes up in terms of, will people, is this a feasibility issue? I don't know if any other sites have thought about doing it or are hesitant. It looks like Stephanie Smith has a comment. And Connie has a comment. I don't know if we can unmute them. I apologize for these technical issues.
Hi, I think you guys have unmuted me. Can you hear me? This is Stephanie.
Yes, yep.
Hi, okay, I'm with Georgia MCORP, and we are one of those NCORs that kind of allows their sites to all do their own thing. Decentralized NCOR, if you will. So for one, the communications do sort of come out various ways, like Melissa said. And just because you're rostered with SWOG, there's been some of our coordinators that get constant communication from SWOG and others that never do, even Dr. Blanky's weekly emails. So we're not really sure why or how communication varies. But a lot of times invites for certain studies or certain things do directly just go to your NCOR administrator and your PI. And so it's not necessarily getting to the site managers who really can make the decisions about the trials to open. Fortunately, with my involvement with SWOG, I tend to get the communications and emails pretty well, but I can't speak to that being the case with all of our NCOR sites throughout Georgia. You know, especially when you're NCOR, kind of your administrative lead, if there's been like changeover and there's been like an interim person who's filling in and they're not really sure what to do with that communication. So ensuring that it does go out to all of the sites, because what we do in Savannah, they don't necessarily do in Atlanta. So there's variations in the trials that are open within NCORs. Like within a single NCOR, there's variation, at least in mine.
So that's super helpful. I mean, I do wonder sometimes when if we can do better at trying to make sure that we're getting all the information from all of the interested parties out to who it needs to go to in terms of making these decisions. Connie, did you have something you wanted to add to that as well?
Hi, can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted finally.
Yeah.
I think you can't hit the wagon too many times probably. So making sure the CCDR leads that are named get it, but also I think as backup, making sure the PI and administrators also see it. A lot of our networks do have ways that we talk to one another and do feasibility and site assessment and communication to and from our research bases. So for our site, kind of opposite maybe of Stephanie's, that is really helpful if it comes to the PI and the administrative leads as well, just so we can make sure it gets in the right hands at all of our sites to really look at. And then we kind of beat the drum repeatedly at weekly team meetings and ask our sites for feedback and kind of rally the troops and try to come up with aggregate responses sometimes, even if one person can't do it, but can we figure out why we can't do it? So give us the maximum ability to figure out our network, I guess is what I'm saying. And we'll try to get you the maximum amount of feedback we can.
So Don, it looks like Amy, before Amy and then Ann had comments about this topic, Ann Geiger, but Amy covering us something about, about this site randomization topic. Amy, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I echo Stephanie's comments a little bit. So we're a decentralized NCOR with the Crown Consortium. We have multiple practices, so it can be a little challenging to try to manage during startup, especially if it's a limited number of practices that can participate. But say we have 3 or 4 practices that want to participate within our own NCOR. So it makes it an extra layer in evaluation of those studies. And also when we try to apply, I mean, again, with decentralized model, it's a lot of work to get through. And so what one site is on, the other site practice might not be on. So then maybe they can't talk to each other because they can't share the information between those sites, even though we're one consortium. So it just creates unique challenges outside of treatment studies. I don't think there are any huge barriers with it though.
I see Jeff has a thought about site randomization. Jeff, do you want to unmute yourself?
Okay, yeah, I have some thoughts. First of all, we've done a fair amount of the site specific, like cluster randomized type trials. And I really think they work really well. I really enjoyed doing them. Even if we get the intervention arm, it's more fun if we get the special arm. And it really helps in terms of implementing the trials. I think in terms of more general, some of the comments, I think one of the things is distinguishing between trials that are being conducted by research personnel and those where we're trying to get implementation type trials. And I think in both situations, looking at advanced practice providers at the sites can really help figuring out, well, is it really going to happen? Or maybe a really interested nurse, a really involved nurse, but oftentimes the advanced practice providers have the insight. And we found that in some cases, we could really make an intervention trial work, or I mean, even a CCDR trial work. We're doing one trial with the Alliance right now that between the partnership between our research coordinator, but also everybody in the office, in particular a key individual, is making it work. Otherwise it would have failed, and we're doing extremely well on that trial. And I think that's an area where certainly in the implementation phase, but also in the design phase, looking at the practicalities, looking how things really go down, a little bit more effort involving these type of individuals in the design, rather than the academics and the PIs who may or may not have that insight as to how the trial is going to go down at the local site. So I think that's really important. And I think my associate Krista Brown-Inglis is on the call, and I know she's talking to the nursing committees about these subjects too. So.
Thank you so much. I know often as from the research basis, we're asking sites to sort of commit or show their interest at the concept stage, but you haven't had the opportunity to see the full protocol. And I think one of the criticisms we've had is that the concept's fairly brief, and by the time it gets to the protocol, there are a lot of changes, and maybe what you committed to is different than what it seems as the protocol's been developed. Have any of the sites had that experience, or is that I know that was something that came up last year on the calls, was the divergence. I don't want to put Anne on the spot, but have there been any protocols where it's been hard to find the right number of sites?
So Dawn, this is Kate.
Okay.
I can say that yes, there have been some. There are many protocols that start with maybe half or 2/3 of the practices loaded, and then they bring on other groups as they come forward. I think one of the things that the research bases have also struggled with is with some of the grant funded studies. As they are preparing those grant applications, sites will, write letters of support for the work to be done. And then when the grant gets funded, which I realize can take a while, that practice will say, you know what, we're not going to be able to do this now. And so it's a little bit of a juxtaposition of, we have a letter of support saying we can do this, and then when it gets to the time to do it, you can't do it. So I think that leads a little bit to your point of, the idea versus the actual protocol, and how to engage, site staff on the writing of the protocols and making sure these protocols are really things that the site personnel are engaged in, which I know was a conversation that we had last fall as well.
Thank you. I don't know if
Dawn, this is Anne. I'm unmuted.
Oh, thank you.
Great to hear from everybody. Kate is absolutely right. What I will add is that we are absolutely committed to having the sites give feedback. I think at NCI, I think what's tricky is when to do that, because you need it at the concept point, but it's absolutely true that when the protocol comes, it's different. I think we've had some really good experiences where the bases have given their draft protocols to one or two or three administrators or research nurses at sites and asked for specific feedback. And I would encourage something like that, particularly some of the people who have spoken today about, we like it and here's the challenge, you know, here's a couple challenges. But I think if the bases would take that step, that might be a very good step to take. I know some folks have gotten really good feedback.
That's super helpful. I do think that sometimes like everybody's racing against the clock between the concept and the protocol. And sometimes I think we should take back to SWOG like a better mechanism to make sure that we're getting appropriate site feedback during that development, because sometimes it's those nitty-gritty specifics that make something that they thought was doable then undoable, or vice versa. So that's a great suggestion, and I think we need to build that into our protocol building process a little bit better.
I also think, Dawn,
for these studies and across the board. Sorry.
Yeah, I think being flexible for the bases, being flexible and hearing feedback, we definitely see that that's very important. I think the CCDR studies are different and have to be a little more flexible, certainly, than the treatment trials. And I think the sites and bases working together are just incredibly critical. Rhoda might care to comment on this. I don't know if she's still on, but this is something we do talk with her about as well.
No, and I mean, I think you covered it, you know, fine. I don't have anything more to add. We really engaged the sites on this, and you know, I think that for what our goal is in terms of having a very diverse organizational in our network, I think that the cluster randomization is really a fantastic way to go. So I don't really have any additional comments.
So Don, I wonder, as far as the issue of grant-funded CCDR studies and the lag, which is inevitable, that's just the way things are. But one approach might be to have the people who write the letters of support, maybe when the grant is funded and the protocol is being developed, to see if one could directly canvass more active engagement. That way, one doesn't do something unnecessarily divisive in developing a protocol.
Yeah, like a stakeholder engagement meeting at the very beginning of the process to make sure, because we see even with some of the grants, like they get presented and then they get revised 10 times, and then all of a sudden it's a very different study. And that can even happen between the initial concept and the protocol. And so we need to figure out a better mechanism, you know, because sometimes there's 6 months between meetings, and trying to pull everybody together to get that kind of really key feedback. And maybe incorporating more, you know, site stakeholder engagement calls to make sure that during that process, we're getting appropriate feedback between concept and protocol.
We're down to the wire now. We got 4 minutes left. I know it's been interesting interaction. Technology is supposed to facilitate our interaction. Sometimes it does a little bit different, but I think we've soldiered through pretty well. Does anybody have any pressing matters to raise? Speak now, or for 6 months, hold that peace, you know? Well, I suppose there is the upcoming, you know, meeting, so maybe you do have only a few weeks before you can speak up again. But last words before we go. Jennifer, you want to share your chat comment? If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that, that I was just saying that I know for certain studies there are specific NCORP champions that are even part of the study team from the beginning and all throughout the design. And I'm wondering whether or not that could be incorporated for all studies, you know, and having, you know, one of the NCORP PIs or something be designated, you know, to help develop the studies on, you know, throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think also defining that role as being somebody that would be the go-to contact person for all of the NCORPs to answer specific issues. I mean, I know they're also different from each other, but I do think we need to formalize that mechanism, and it's a great suggestion. Thank you for bringing it up.
Well, I think we must either all be getting used to pandemic life, or, you know, the angst has been beaten out of us. I don't know. But I think the tenor of today's meeting is very different than the one from the last couple of times. I think we got 2 minutes. I would personally like to say congratulations to everyone. You know, first of all, just being alive alone is a major achievement in those horrible times. Caring for the patients the way we have, finding some way to continue to bear this, you know, pre-existing burden through quicksand that, you know, the pandemic has been, is truly, you know, heroic to everyone. Now, I'll let you just have the last words before we close.
Absolutely.
This is Borda. I just said, bring your fire to the PI's meeting and continue the dialogue that you just finished.
Careful what you wish for. You might get it.
Thank you all, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll
Stay
be
away.
in
Stay
person
safe.
next time. Yep.
Go
Bye,
get
everyone.
vaccinated. I hope there are no vaccine hesitant people in our crowd. Bye-bye.